Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, every day when I'm home in Texas, I hear from Texans who are deeply dismayed about the growing politicization and weaponization of the Department of Justice and the FBI. If you are not, every one of you should be deeply concerned about the damage being done to the integrity of the institutions in which you operate. My office hears regularly from FBI agents and from assistant U.S. attorneys who are likewise concerned about the politicization and weaponization of the Department of Justice and the FBI, and this is profoundly damaging to the rule of law in our nation. Last month, a whistleblower brought to light the existence in the FBI of a report, an FD 1023, in which the informant alleges that President Biden and his family members engaged in a $5 million bribery scheme during his time as vice president. Deputy Director Abate, is it true that the FBI has a report making those allegations?
I'm not going to comment on that, Senator.
And why is that?
I'm just not going to comment on information we received, investigations.
Do you owe an obligation to the American people to be candid about evidence of corruption by the President of the United States?
This is an area that I'm not going to get into with you, Senator.
Well, I understand you don't want to, and that's why people are mad at the FBI, because you're stonewalling and covering up serious allegations of evidence of corruption from the president. Yesterday, Senator Chuck Grassley stood on the Senate floor and alleged that there are 17 recordings of this informant from Burisma, Ukrainian natural gas company. 15 of them are recordings, voice recordings of him talking to Hunter Biden. 2 of them are voice recordings of him talking to Joe Biden. Deputy Director Abate, does the FBI have 17 voice recordings laying out evidence of a bribery scheme?
Senator, I would add also that we've worked with the House Oversight Committee.
Yeah, this is the Senate. We're the other side of the Capitol. This is the Senate. Do you have those 17 recordings?
I'm not going to comment on any investigative matters, Senator.
See, that's the problem. The FBI, and I've had this conversation with Chris Wray too, this is why you are damaging the institution. The American people have a right to know whether there is serious, credible evidence that the President of the United States took a $5 million bribe. And by the way, if it's false, Chairman Durbin just rolled his eyes. If Chairman Durbin were interested in the rule of law, we would have a hearing on these allegations. But of course, the Democrats don't want a hearing on these allegations. And to be clear, if the allegations are false, you know who could disprove them? Joe Biden. He could call for this to be released publicly. But the FBI is stonewalling. Would you agree?
Two things, Senator. No one's stonewalling. The 1023
you just said you refused to answer the question.
In response to a subpoena.
Okay, then why'd you refuse to answer my question?
The pertinent information is there, and I reject your assertion that the FBI is politicized.
Why did you refuse to answer my question?
I just answered your question.
Okay, so yes, you have a 1023. Do you have the 17 recordings, yes or no?
I'm not going to get further into that.
So you're stonewalling. You can't say I'm not refusing to answer your question, but I won't answer your question.
I'm going to answer within the parameters that we operate in. Here.
That's the problem. The FBI has right now an unlimited hubris that you believe you are unaccountable. You don't believe you're accountable to the United States Congress, and you don't believe you're accountable to the American people. And you are doing damage. The FBI is a great institution. When I go home to Texas, people ask me, should we abolish the FBI? Now, I tell them no, because you have heroes and patriots working for you that are catching child predators, that are catching terrorists. But you're sitting there happily erecting a wall to protect Joe Biden. Will you provide to this committee, not the House, the Senate Judiciary Committee, will you provide the FD 1023 and will you provide the 17 recordings so we can assess what is the evidence, the specific credible evidence that Joe Biden personally took a $5 million bribe from a foreign national?
Senator, we will work with this committee, you and other members, to provide the information within the parameters of the process.
Will you provide the FD 1023, yes or no?
I will take that back, and we will work with our team.
So you're not answering that. Will you provide the 17 recordings?
We will take that back, and we'll work with you.
So you're not answering that either. did you investigate in any way, shape, or form these allegations?
Senator, once again, I'm not going to comment.
So
on
you're not going to
investigative-
say whether you did your job?
We do our job to the very best of our ability.
Well, not here. You're not answering a single question to the American people. And you may think this is esoteric. I promise you, millions of Americans are concerned. You know who isn't concerned? Not a single Senate Democrat. We're going to go through this whole hearing. Not one Democrat will ask a question about this. You know who else isn't concerned? The corporate media, who is joining with the Democrats in covering up this evidence. If Joe Biden is innocent, the evidence should be made public and demonstrate that he's innocent. But if he is not, is it true this informant who alleged that he personally took a bribe was an informant the FBI had relied upon previously in other investigations? Yes or no?
Senator, in each and every investigation that we have, all the work that we do,
I asked you a yes or no
expectation
question.
is that every logical avenue of investigation be pursued
I asked you a
to
yes
its
or no
fullest.
question. Are you going to answer it?
Yeah, I'm answering your question.
Was the informant one you had relied on previously in other investigations? Yes or no?
Senator, we run down every piece of information.
You're not answering it then. You're refusing to answer it. So you're refusing to answer the
To
question.
the fullest extent possible.
You're refusing to answer the question.
relentlessly,
Is that
and
correct?
aggressively in all instances.
Senator, your
It's
time is
disgraceful. It's disgraceful, Deputy Director Abate. Disgraceful.
Senator, your time has expired. Senator Tillis?
Chairman, I think Senator Blackburn goes before me, or Senator Welch. I appreciate the opportunity, but
Thank you, Senator Tillis. It's Senator Welch is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all the witnesses. I'm sitting in a seat that was previously occupied by Senator Leahy, who is a champion of civil liberties and a strong supporter of law enforcement, his own prosecution background. But he, and with the great support of Vermonters, very much was concerned about the civil liberty questions that are raised. And I've heard from all of the witnesses, you share that concern. And I certainly do. What Chairman Durbin said in his opening remarks in expressing his very serious concern about the extraordinary breaches, I share that. So a couple of things. One, Senator Cornyn had asked about codifying in statute reforms that have been made. In my understanding, I think this goes to you, Mr. Olson, is that you would be supportive of any of the reforms that have been made to date being codified in statute, so it wasn't another episode of trust me and we'll try to get it right?
No, I think that's exactly as the deputy director said. I mean, the fundamental point is we are open to engaging on reforms and implementing reforms that don't undermine the essential effectiveness of Section 702. Certainly,
but codifying them.
and among those would be putting in statute where it makes sense to do so some of the changes that the FBI has implemented on its own to ensure compliance.
I just want to make certain that we're on the same page
Yes.
here, because it's one thing to say, trust us, we've learned and we'll be good in the future. It's another thing to have the force of law behind it. Second
If I may
thing,
just say, I'm hesitating only because as the lawyer here next to Mr. Abate, I just want to make sure that the language in any statute is appropriate,
no,
of course.
that goes without saying.
Yep.
Now, another thing, I know Senator Leahy and Senator Lee, I'm sorry. Okay, Senator Leahy and Senator Lee worked on an amicus amendment, as I understand it. Senator Lee, and by the way, he very much appreciated working with you on that, he's told me. My understanding is you're resistant to that, you're saying for practical reasons. But keep in mind, I think the motivation Senator Leahy had, I'll speak for my conversation with him, and I've heard Senator Lee express it, the interest of maintaining Fourth Amendment protections for citizens is constitutional and inviolate. So I would expect to advocate for that again. You've answered the question, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention. You know, the heart of this is this question of whether there is an exception on the warrant protection when a U.S. citizen gets swept into this. And I know Mr. Ossoff asked in my absence about the warrant protection, but I am wanting to go back on that. Why can't we have a warrant when it does involve a U.S. citizen? And can you make distinctions between a situation where there's imminent urgency, and obviously that requires a different kind of action, where versus those situations where information comes up. My telephone number is on a telephone that's been captured on the battlefield, but there's no urgent matter that has to proceed with action. What's the problem with providing a continuation of the warrant protection that is available to all U.S. citizens outside of FISA?
So maybe Mr. Fonzone might have more to add to this, but let me just say, stepping back, so it's really important for me to be clear that when it comes to the targeting decision, the initial decision to target, that is outside of the Fourth Amendment, because the targeting decisions are focused on non-U.S. persons overseas. It's only when the FBI receives...
No, I understand that.
Yeah, it's only 3% of all of the 702 collection that FBI has access to, where it's related to an open FBI investigation. So they have 3% of the lawfully collected information, and it's very common rather than rare that the need to search that data, whether it's an ongoing cyber attack, for example, or an espionage effort, that it is not a degree of urgency to quickly be able to say, at the very earliest stage of an investigation, we need to understand, is this technical identifier associated with this cyber attack? Is this hitting other, hospitals or energy companies?
My time is coming up, and we'll have to, there's real practical questions here, but I go back to this absolutely astonishing situation where folks who showed up here in Washington, it was totally domestic, or Black Lives Matter, totally domestic, were searched. And like, how in the world did that happen? Somebody just felt like doing it, or what? I know my time is up, so I'm going to have to stop, but I just want to convey my ongoing concerns, which I think many of the committee members share. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank